Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's virtual plant clinic. My name is Bill Lester. I'm with University of Florida Extension Service here in beautiful Hernando County. And joining me today are my loyal co-host, Colby Pitts, who's the Hernando County Florida Friendly Landscape Coordinator. Good morning, Colby.
Good morning.
And one of our master gardener volunteers, Bernie, the man with all the answers. Good morning, Bernie. How are you?
Good morning. I'm just doing great. I'm fantastic today.
And I've been tied up here, there, in other counties and all over the state sometimes. So I haven't been around here for the virtual plant clinics for a while. So I'm going to have to figure out how to do this again, I guess. It feels almost a little strange, like I've been away for quite some time. But hey, we have at least somebody tuning in this morning. Good morning, Bill. How are you? And as always, if you have any kind of lawn and garden or vegetable garden or tree or irrigation or any kind of questions about what's happening out in your yard, please feel free to go ahead and put them in the comments and we will do our very best to answer them. And if we don't know the answer, we will help to find it out for you. So that's what we're here for Thursday mornings to help answer your questions. So go ahead and put some in the chat. And if you're watching this as a recording, we will be showing all of our contact information near the end. So feel free to reach out and contact us. You can email us pictures, phone calls, stop by the office, whatever it might be. We're here to help you solve your problems. So the only thing that I really have to talk about today is planning, because we are going to be working with a new neighborhood here in Hernando County, because there's so much construction going on and so many new homes being built and so many new communities. I'm sure it's the same no matter where in Florida you live. A lot of new communities being built. And we're going to be working with one. And I had the pleasure of just driving through it real quick yesterday just to get an idea of how big it is, how small it is. Are they just starting to build the houses? Are they almost all done? They're down to the last few. And I saw some examples of things that are not going to work out, that look really, really good right now, but they're not going to work out really well long term. So 5 or 10 years down the road. For example, if you install trees and it's a it's kind of tree that gets really huge and your yard is really small, it's not going to work long term. If you put in queen palms and they're 8 feet tall right now up against your house, they look great. But what do queen palms do over time? Ideally, they don't die. Ideally, they grow and they get bigger. And you need to place them in a proper spot in a bed, but not too close to the house, but not too far out by the sidewalk. You have to put some thought and planning into it to put things in the right spot. So it looks good now. It'll look good next week. And hopefully 10 years from now, it will look good also. Bernie, I know that you've seen probably countless pictures and examples of just poor planning. Why did they do this? Who came up with this idea to put live oak trees right next to a sidewalk?
Well, you have to realize that the thing that happens is everybody wants instant gratification.
Uh huh.
And if you plant an 8 foot tree and it's in proportion and everything is beautiful, that's instant gratification. Now, the fact that it's going to do something in 10 years or 20 years, nobody thinks more than, maybe tomorrow we'll consider. But beyond that, it's the same thing. Why do they plant uh, bushes that are 6 foot wide, 2 foot or 18 inches on centers? Um, you know, it, you've created a problem later on. It looks beautiful now. Well, if your intent is next year I'm going to rip everything out and redo it, that's great. But
Yeah.
uh, one of the things while we're talking about this landscaping thing, I have noticed that we've had a lot of fungal problems with landscaping. And I think possibly part of the problem is because we've had such a long dry season, people are out watering uh, the landscaping, uh, and they're watering the foliage, or maybe their irrigation system sprays the foliage. But uh, we really need to point out: please do not water the foliage. If you're going to go out and hand water, water at the base. Uh,
Hmm.
Leaving water sitting on the plant doesn't help the plant. It can't drink. It has no mouth. But what happens is the fungus takes over, and you end up with serious disease problems. Don't plant it too close. Uh, you need to airflow around all these things that are in the landscape, and don't leave them wet. So I think if we had those two problems taken care of, about a third of the things that I get would go away. So uh, Florida is kind of an interesting state, folks. Probably our number one problem with every plant here is a fungal problem. So uh,
Yeah,
fungus ends up
you
what
occasionally see plant viruses and bacterial problems, but other than specific ones that affect specific plants, I honestly don't see a whole lot of them. Just lots and lots of fungal leaf spot by the end of summer.
yeah, what 80% maybe of the plant diseases are fungus.
80, well, really for me, more like 90% or more.
Yeah, I see it a lot. People just love to bring me a leaf, and without even knowing what the plant is, you look at the leaf. You don't have to put it under a microscope. You can almost hear it shouting, "I'm here! I'm eating it! I'm a fungus!" So
And usually by the end of summer, everything in your yard, if you look really hard, you're going to find some leaves with spots. So people start bringing in the viburnum leaves, ligustrums, tree leaves, everything. So if you look really hard, you're going to find some spots. So we have a question here from Bill. He said, I thought part of the issue is the county requires hardwood trees as a replacement trees on properties for new construction, but I could be wrong. Other counties allow more options. I know that here in Hernando County, depending on the size of the lot, they do have rules for how many trees have to be planted on that lot. And it's completely dependent on the exact size. The bigger the piece of property that you're putting a house on, the more trees you have to have.
It's like
I don't know how
15
many it is
trees
off
an
the top of
acre.
my head.
I
Pardon?
think it's 15 trees an acre.
That sounds about right. And, obviously, most subdivision building lots are much smaller than 1 acre. They're a fraction of an acre.
do you think that using the cheapest tree you can get enters into the contractor's mind, or do do they say, "Hey, we ought to really do these people a favor and put in a little better tree than the uh, oak, the laurel oak that we can get for $19"? Do you think that has a lot to do with it?
I think so. And the sad thing is, there are a large number of trees that will grow in any given part of Florida. And new home construction only uses a very, very small subset of them. You see the same two or three or maybe four different trees in every neighborhood. Teresa is kind enough to put a link to a very important document there. This is the Hernando County acceptable tree list. And this is just a list of all the different trees that are going to do well here in Hernando County. So if you're anywhere in Central Florida, these trees, as a general rule, apply. Um, Buddy up in the Panhandle, your trees are going to be a little bit different. Somebody down in Miami, your trees are very different. They have a lot of different trees there that you could pick from. But there's a lot of trees that are going to grow very well here. And unfortunately, in new home construction, you see oaks, the occasional maple, and maples can be problematic. They don't always work out. They're a little dicey. And I saw some pines yesterday, plunked in a like community area of St. Augustine grass, which means those pines are going to get watered, fertilized, big doses of weed and feed because you got to kill all the weeds in the St. Augustine grass. And I hate to imagine what those pines are going to look like a couple years down the road. They probably won't be around for that long. So a lot of really great tree choices out there. You just have to look through the list, figure out what's right for you, look at the mature height and width, and know a 6 foot tall oak tree will not always be 6 feet tall. They grow very, very tall and large. Got to give it room.
The
I want to
thing that
clarify
oh,
real
go
quick.
ahead.
Yeah.
I want to clarify that the 15 trees an acre number I saw is actually that I remembered. I looked up in the ordinance. That's actually for commercial projects, so kind of disregard that unless you're building a
Oh, okay.
Walmart or something. So I'm gonna look through the ordinance and try to see what the exact rule is.
Yeah, commercial builders have to have their landscape plans looked over by the county, and they have to make sure they're not putting in invasive plants. It's a good plant choice. They're putting in plants and landscaping, so that's all reviewed more individually and closer than an individual house would be.
One of the things that I wonder about, I had somebody call the other day and want to know about lightning rods. And it's an interesting situation because, we are the lightning capital. And for the most part, lightning is going to take out the tallest thing around. So
Mm-hmm.
you start a subdivision, you go in and you bulldoze everything out, and it's a shame they don't save the trees, but with all the construction traffic, they'd probably kill them anyway. So
They would. That
they,
is a problem with that.
they strip it down to bare ground. The utility companies come in, all the utilities are now buried, so there's no utility poles. They put in a bunch of houses, and now this group of houses is the highest thing on the site. What keeps us from having more homes struck by lightning than what it seems like we do? And the question that the man asked was, does it make sense to put in lightning rods? And I really don't have an answer to that. That would be one of those things that uh, I think I'll do some research on.
Yeah, that's outside of my area of expertise. But I know that houses do get hit by lightning. I mean, it doesn't happen very often. And a lot of times it'll cause a fire up in the attic or on the roof. And very unfortunate, causes a lot of damage, but it does happen.
I did actually find, and for new builds, up to and including 7,000 square feet, you have to have two.
Okay.
And then in between 7,000 and 10,000 is three, and for every additional three throughout 3,000 square feet, it's one more tree. But that's for new builds. So if it, obviously if your house is already there, it maybe requirements may be different.
Yeah, I know we helped to put this list together a couple years ago because the list they did have included camphor trees, which are invasive,
Mm-mm.
10 different kinds of oaks, and that was the whole list. And there's a lot more that you can grow here. So between myself, county, and master gardener helper, went through. It has each different type of tree. There's a link there to University of Florida information on that specific tree. So it's a great place to come up with that plan, that good, proper plan that's going to work in the long run, to use a resource like that to kind of pick which trees you're going to want.
Winged elm turns out to be a really nice tree in that it relatively slow growing, provides decent shade. It doesn't go out of scale for 30 years. So,
Yeah.
For the average person, it's a great tree. And yet, almost nobody's ever heard of it. And I believe it's a native.
Oh, it is a native. And the last house that we lived in was in a subdivision, and there was one in the backyard. I don't know if the builder planted it or the previous owners planted it. I'm not sure how it got there. And it was mid-size at that point. It was definitely much more than a new planting kind of sapling, but it wasn't as tall as the house yet. So it was a very good medium-sized to small tree at that point.
Yeah, they
I'm sure
get
it's still
what,
there.
25, 30 feet at the end of their life. And that's a pretty decent sized tree, a lot of shade, and it's still uh, within the size limits that you need to maintain perspective correct in the property.
Yeah, yeah. And there may be issues where you put a tree in and it works very well for many years, but way down the like 30 years or more down the road, it might outgrow the spot. That happens, and that might happen, and then the tree's going to have to be replaced. It kills me. I see in some of these new subdivisions, even because the one that I visited yesterday isn't zero lot line, it's like the micro lot lines where there's
Yeah.
literally 10 feet between the wall of your house and the wall of the neighbor's house. And they're big 2-story houses and teeny tiny little lots. And then when I see magnolia trees in the front yard,
Mm.
the entire front yard, if you clear everything out, isn't enough room to support a decent sized magnolia. And don't think that
Yeah,
little
those
gem
magnolias get
magnolias
huge.
stay little. That just means they only
Mhm.
get as tall as your house, not twice as tall as your house.
The house I grew up in, actually, we had just a massive magnolia multiple times. It was a one-story house, but it was like multiple times taller than the house. And after we moved out, sadly, it ended up getting taken down during a hurricane. And I just now it's like seeing this art. That front yard was really small, and the whole front yard was that magnolia
Yeah.
tree, and there was nothing else.
People across the street from me have a uh, pine tree that I would estimate is between 80 and 100 feet. It's one of the tallest pine trees around. It's and it died. Started it turned brown about a month ago. I don't know what the people are going to do. It has the capability, although it's far back on their property, of falling completely across the road if it falls in the right direction. So, but that's going to be a nightmare to get taken down.
Yeah.
So you really need to think about that. What is it going to cost to get rid of this thing if I made a mistake and it's now 60, 80 feet tall? There's a lot of oak trees that end up in that 60-foot plus range. So most of the laurel oaks hit about 50 feet and start dying, so they start falling over a little earlier. But about 20 years to 40 years is as far as they're going to go. So I only recommend those to older people that need a quickie tree.
Yeah, we get that question. What's a really fast growing shade tree? Well, none of them grow in like a year or two. Trees, even fast growing trees, don't really grow that fast. It takes a certain amount of time. And then the really fast growing ones tend to be really invasive also. You really don't want that.
Yeah, it's like what are you gonna tell them? Plant a bunch of bamboo? I don't.
Yeah, or I don't know, Colby, if you're familiar with the ear trees. I don't know if they're invasive.
ear ear trees. Let's
Ear
see.
trees, they become massive. The trunk is, you can't put your arms around it, and they get the seed pod, a big black seed pod that's shaped kind of like
Yeah,
an ear.
yeah.
And their roots are huge, and they pop up out of the ground, and they will damage the foundation of a house or any other concrete slab if they're planted too closely. Those things become, they're fast growing. You don't want one.
Hmm.
Is that what we call monkey pods?
Yeah, yeah, that's another name for them, is monkey pods or ear tree. And I have no idea if that's native or invasive.
I don't think they're native.
It's not native. It's introduced to Florida, but I so what I've always heard elephant ear is what it's kind of referred to in the article I'm
Yeah.
looking at. That's not what I thought of as elephant ear.
Yeah, no, elephant ear is more of a herbaceous plant.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
but it's called that here. I have not heard of this.
but
Oh,
sometimes when it comes to trees, the neighborhood just made a really, really bad decision, and I'm amazed that nobody figures it out until it's too late. I knew Teresa would find it. Here we go, ear tree. So we do have a publication on that if somebody wants to see what the heck I was talking about. And they can become massive trees, like Jurassic Park kind of trees. But our son bought a house in a subdivision in over in Orange City in Volusia County. And it's something or other oaks. So that makes you think the neighborhood has to have lots and lots of oak trees, right? It's a nice high end subdivision, expensive houses through the whole neighborhood. The little no man's land between the street and the sidewalk, which can't be more than 6 feet wide, oak trees, one in front of each house. He bought the house, and then they find out that there's a big issue with the HOA and HOA fees and everything. The oak trees are popping up all the sidewalks. And they told me about that. I'm like, well, duh. Yeah, I could have told you that 20 years ago when they were building this place. That's what happens. Oak trees grow. The roots will pop up sidewalks if they're way too close to a sidewalk. They're popping up the sidewalks and the edge of the street and the curb and everything. So they're spending all this money to a tree service to apply something that stops the roots from growing. And I don't even know how effective it is. It's marginally temporarily effective. So they're spending a bunch of money to kick the big bill further down the road. And that big bill is going to come. All those oaks will have to be taken down and the stumps removed, and getting, let's say, 100 oak trees, decent, good sized oak trees, they're at least as tall as everybody's house, removed and ground out, my guess is kind of expensive. And
The
he's going to get his bill like all of his neighbors will for it. And anybody who looked at that when they were building the neighborhood would go like, what are you thinking? Guys, this is going to be a huge problem for whoever happens to be living in this neighborhood 10, 20, 30 years down the road.
I can't imagine that stopping root growth on a tree is going to lead to it being healthy anyway. You might have some health issues with these trees that might exacerbate you having to take them out a lot faster.
Probably because I looked up the product that they're using because you asked me about it, and it does say that it slows and stops root growth, but only temporarily. There is no magic silver bullet that will stop a oak tree from growing, or growing
Except
its
for
roots,
killing it and cutting it
or
down.
getting
No.
taller. That's what oak trees do. We can't really stop it, and they're going to do it no matter what.
Um, so I went on a site visit to development on Monday, and they have it's magnolia tree, crepe myrtle, magnolia tree, crepe myrtle, and not a whole lot of space in between them. And me knowing how large magnolia trees got, I was really surprised that that was the route they went with. I was like, well, I
Yeah,
don't think those crepe myrtles are going to make it too long because they were not very far apart.
strange plant selection.
Yeah, to say the
But
least.
it's like what Bernie said. What they shoot for is to look really good today, because
Hmm.
people are coming to look at buying houses in your neighborhood today and this weekend, and it needs to look good now. And the sad thing is that they don't, a lot of times they're not taking into account what the situation going to be 5, 10, 20, 30 years down the road when these poor home owners are going to be there. And if you make a really big mistake, the bill is going to come due eventually.
That's another thing people don't realize, that because we have a year-round warm climate, the plants have, as a general rule, half the life here that they have up north. That's not true of the bigger trees. A live oak might go 400 years, be 150 feet wide.
Yeah.
But the things that you use for hedges, those kind of trees, smaller trees, a lot of those things have a really, really short life. Peach tree, up north, a peach tree is like a 25-year tree, and here, 10 to 12 years, they're worn out. They've been growing all year. The bark falls off. They just age out really quick. So when you're making a selection, that what looks pretty today, uh, nobody ever considers what it's going to look like, uh, and they don't even seem to care what the disadvantages to this plant are going to be, even as short a time as 3 or 4 years from now. Look at the number of times you go out and you find that they've got invasive plants. You know, uh, camphor plant is really a wonderful thing. If you got a camphor plant, you got little camphor trees growing up everywhere.
Yep.
So,
And your neighbors do too.
yeah, so if you're mowing the yard, that's fine. But if you got a vacant lot next door that isn't mowed all the time, uh, you've got a lot of camphor trees in the area, and the, they show up in places a block away and then 2 blocks away, uh, and nobody seems to ever think about that. It's a beautiful tree. I want one of those. Uh,
Yeah.
there's a lot of beautiful trees like that. Unfortunately, uh, just because it's on the invasive list, if it isn't on the class 1 invasive or whatever it is, so that you can't plant it, can't buy it, uh, you go to the store and they've got all those trees for sale. They've got every invasive plant that you can legally buy. Seems to be what people want, and they're there.
And just because it's invasive doesn't mean it's an evil, horrible plant. I mean, many of them look attractive. They flower. They're very pretty. You'll see pollinators and butterflies visiting the plants. So they're good in that respect. Just if they're invasive, when they get loose in a wooded area or a natural area, they take off, they take over, they dominate, they push out all the native plants, all the different organisms that depend on those native plants are now left without food, shelter, whatever else they use the plants for, and it's a bad situation. So there are a lot of great options for whether it be trees or landscape plant material. Look up Florida friendly lists. And Colby, do you have a link to that by any chance in your link tree or?
The plant guide is up there right now. The plant guide, the landscape design and plant selection guide, I think is the full name. That's on the link tree right now. Um,
Okay. Okay. So we'll show Colby's link tree link here. And if you go there, you're going to find a link to that Florida friendly landscape book. And that has all the different plants that are either native or Florida friendly. And be careful because for each plant, it says where in Florida it grows. It might be South Florida, it might be North Florida, it might be Central, might be the whole state. If so, it's going to say so. So if you live in the
you
Panhandle, the things that do really well in Miami might not be the best choice.
Yep. You can also use the app. They have it available on the web or on your phone to filter out exactly what you're looking for. If you want a tree that grows in zone 9, you filter out and it shows you exactly that. You can filter them by soil pH, salt tolerance, bunch of different a bunch of different criteria. It's a really wonderful resource. It's the same information that's in that plant guide, but it might help you parse through it a little bit because you can uh, filter out there
Yeah.
using those.
Yeah, they do have a phone app now, and that's probably very convenient when you're at a nursery or a plant sale or something like that. You're looking at a plant and you're thinking, I'm not familiar with this plant. I wonder if it's invasive, Florida friendly. Should I be planting it? If you got your phone, you can just go ahead and look it up and get some information on it.
The original Florida, when uh, the I get what is it post Columbian, when people first came here, the pre-Columbian Florida was pine trees and wiregrass and lots of fires, and so the understory was fairly low down, and the pine trees were pretty well spaced out, and there are pictures showing people driving wagons uh, through the original pine forest. So they weren't dense. They weren't forest in the sense that it was just lush trees everywhere. It was a balanced uh, ecological situation. The understory got burned and kept down, and it
Uh-huh.
stayed low, and the pine trees didn't mind the fires at all. The fires weren't all that hot because the everything that was burning was low down, and because it burned fairly frequent, well, we didn't have the uh, big hot fire. So there were areas that were cypress trees instead of pine trees, and it was just a nice, clean situation. So we come in and we cut down all the pine trees. And when you get rid of the pine trees, the immediate trees that come back, uh, the hardwoods, uh, tend to be kind of gnarly and low growing, and they tend to take over. Well, when they would burn very hot because all these trees, we had fuel now, 10 feet, 15 feet in the air where we hadn't had before. We only had 3 or 4 feet of fuel. So we raise the temperature, we kill off the bigger trees, the situation becomes more and more of a problem, and it's being created by more and more people living here. And then we need pencils, so we take all the cedar trees and we turn them into pencils. And if they just had ballpoint pens, there you go. And the cypress trees. Now we got people living here and they want mulch, so we cut down all the cypress trees and turn them into mulch. And little by little, we have eliminated all of the original Florida. So when you look at these forests, what you see today is not what was there 200 years ago. It's just
Mhm.
amazing how quick this gets changed, and
Hmm.
it's really obvious around here because uh, just north of here along Highway 41, uh, we would have a nice pine forest when we first moved here. Well, that pine forest got thinned out, and they weren't burning for a while, and the little scraggy hardwoods took over and made it very difficult to burn. And they finally went in and really took things out. It looked terrible for a while, but uh, it does come back. And when it comes back better than
Yeah.
it was. So the fire is really, really important. And it's, if you're from up north, it's very difficult to explain that the fire is a good thing. But uh,
Yeah, because Smokey the Bear always says it's a bad thing.
yeah,
But I know that about for a lot of the area of Florida, so many different things are fire adapted. About 60%
Hmm.
of the organisms that live out there, that's plants, animals, insects, everything, are dependent on regular burning, regular fires. So if they don't
Yeah.
have
No,
regular
and
fires, it becomes overgrown and we lose them. Their numbers decrease
yeah,
dramatically.
a lot of pine trees specifically are a great example.
Yep.
So like pine trees, their cones to open need that heat. So when it burns, they open. And the thing is they know to drop. Well, they know whatever they've evolved to drop that when after everything else is burnt, there's less competition at the bottom. Um, so that's why they do that. I think if you, I don't know how often everyone here walks in the woods, but when the a lot of the woods and wooded areas you see now were not like that. Like Bernie said, 200 years ago, the amount of just junk at the bottom that's all tall. The old forests that used to be here, you'd be able to walk right through them. But now it's like so much of it is just so dense, and uh, it's interesting. I can look and tell you it's like, oh, that's super impacted just by driving by it because you can't see through the bottom. Um, so it's just something to keep in mind. I think when you're talking about fire, how important it is.
California is should have learned a lesson. They have these mammoth fires because once they start, they have suppressed fire for so long that there's tremendous reserves of material to burn, and the more there is to burn, the worse the fire becomes. So, if you only burn once every 20 years, you're going to have a mammoth fire. If you burn uh, regularly every 2 3 years, and that seems to be this county it does a really good job on that. They seem to
Yeah.
do burns really well and fairly frequent. So I'm really kind of proud of them. They have maintained the forestry here much better than most of the state.
Yeah, I know FWC and Florida Forestry are very good about working towards keeping things, with controlled burns and keeping them under control on a regular schedule. Of course, their most important thing is to do it safely when the weather is
Hmm.
correct and not too much wind, so it doesn't get out of control. And picking what areas need to be done first, second, third. But they do a very, very good job. I know they get a lot of flack from residents about why are you burning down that beautiful forest? This patch of
I'll
forest
try what.
shouldn't be packed full of turkey
Yeah.
oaks and vines and stuff like that. It should be fairly wide open pine trees because that's where deer live. That's where turkeys live. They don't live
Yeah.
in, a
It's
swampy jungle. They have to be able to get around and native
yeah.
flowers and
Try
native
walking through
plants.
that forest and tell me
So,
it's a beautiful forest. It's just when I worked at the Southwest Florida Water Management District, they do a lot of burns, and you would be astounded at the amount, if unless you know the amount of preparation, planning, and then when it happens, it's all hands on deck to maintain everybody's safety, the safety of the land that they're working on, um, and it's if one thing is wrong, if they get up that morning and the wind is blowing just a little bit too hard or the wrong
mhm.
direction, even they're like, nope, and they call it, and it is really important. They take all of the various government organizations that are taking part in those burns are incredibly thorough and good at what they do. It's really, if you ever get a chance to look at any of it's super interesting. Go on YouTube and watch. There's plenty of videos of controlled burns here in Florida, and it's really, I think, a lot different than what most people would imagine.
Yeah, and I know that our county forester here in Hernando County, Jessica, is a certified firefighter. So hats off to Jessica. We need to get her on here sometime. I'll get a hold of her because she could tell you about battling forest fires that get out of control or, have gone where they shouldn't have gone. And there's a ton of science and technology. They're using drones now, and that must be great because in the past, you want to burn a great big area, a little hard to get through the forest through a fire to see the other side. Now with drones, you send a drone out. How are we
Yeah.
doing? On the other side of the fire, you can see exactly what's going on.
What's
I know
amazing? Go ahead. Go ahead.
from coming out of those after a burn, coming out of it and being, you're covered black with ash
Hmm.
everywhere, and a lot, they're all wearing face masks, stuff, they take it off, and they, it's really, it's really tough. And I think the technological advancements there, going from, because really the tool you're using to burn for the most part is just a drip torch, with your diesel gas mix, and you're just do this flame's only yay high or so,
Hmm.
if you're on it. um, so it is really tough, but the drones and all that stuff, it's super interesting how they're advancing in the technology.
It's amazing how fertile it is after the burn. The
Hmm.
ash returns a lot of the nutrients back to the soil. You get a high potassium, or not, high potassium
Yep.
level again, and so all these metallic nutrients are put right back. And you go through, and 30 days later, there's things popping up, and 3 months later, the evidence of the burn is there on the trunks of the trees and stuff, but not on the ground. Man, these little
Hmm.
guys are coming back. They're just thrilled to be there. Some of those seeds have been waiting for fire for a long time. Maybe 5 years. The seed is sat there just waiting for a fire. So that you get some really neat plants, and Uh,
Yep.
and it's beautiful. And the variety just keeps increasing and increasing. So, you know, if you don't like the fires and you think they're doing something wrong, walk through one of the forests 30 days after and 90 days after, and you would just be amazed at how quick things change and how pretty it looks. And the fact that you can walk through it now because there's nothing strangling your legs and having to fight through it. So
Yeah, and I know a lot of people object to the smoke and the smell and the ashes. It's only temporary. And I know here in Hernando County, near where I live, we have so many car washes here now that it's not a problem. You don't have to go more than a few blocks to be able to get your car washed if there's a
Right.
couple of ashes on it. So that's not a huge problem anymore. So
yeah,
just wash the car, stay inside for a few days, and the burn will be over. And the forest, it really is amazing the number of plants that nobody has seen in recent memory that will pop up and start to grow not long after a fire.
what I think is it's almost poetic justice is the people that complain so loud so long about you can't have fire, you can't do this, are the people that live in California, and when they finally got one, uh, it burned down everything. So
Yeah.
the reason your house is safe here and is because we do the things. If you want to be in Florida because you like Florida, yeah, in order to maintain Florida, that's one of the things that has to be done. That was always done historically. Everything burned on an average. I think the correct number is 5 years. It was
I
either
heard
4 or 5 years.
many areas 2 to 3 years it
Yeah.
would
Hmm.
burn.
I know it. I know it's Swift Mud. They're rotating throughout the season. They're able to when it's not too wet. Um, but I think they try to knock everything. Like they're on like a 2 to 3 year schedule. I think depending on the condition and uh, what type of environment they're looking at.
And if you live in a house out in the country, out in the woods, you have a lot of forest area around you, that's great. University of Florida has a lot of information online about how to be fire safe. So, what kind of plants you should not put right up against your house, how much of a buffer area between your house and the woods you should have, what should be growing there, what shouldn't be growing there. They do a lot, so much research and science behind this. University of Florida has that information. I know Florida Forest Service has that information.
Well, they'll
Hopefully,
do the
Teresa's still with us if she could look up some. So if you live out in the middle of the woods and you're thinking, well, gosh, if I have a fire in my out here, my house is going to burn down. Once again, proper planning will come in and save the day, and your house will be just fine. And hopefully, you and your whole family will be just fine if you take some planning and steps in advance to have the right things there and the right things not there, when a fire breaks out. Because, hey, Florida's, built on fire, basically.
yeah
Even if your woods haven't burned for a number of years, one day they will.
yeah.
One day
The
lightning is
Forest
going to hit a
Service.
great big dead pine tree a half a mile away, and it's going to start a fire. One day it will happen.
Yep, the Forest
Because the
Service actually does those preventative maintenance burns for private homeowners. I learned that
Yep.
at the Master
Yep.
Gardener class I was at a couple weeks ago. Um, so I think you can you do have to pay for it, but I think the cost, especially when you think about what it can prevent, is kind of negligible, in my opinion. Definitely
Yep.
something to check out. Maybe if we get the forester on here, she'll be able to tell us a little more about that.
I'll get a hold of her.
Yeah, because the so warm here year round, a lot of the plants have a waxy coating to keep from losing water. So uh, green plants that don't burn up north and make you feel comfortable that they're green and you're protected. Here, because of the waxy coating, just about everything that's green will burn in its green condition. So don't make the mistake so many people do. You go out and start a fire in a field, and because the field is all green, thinking it's not going to burn because it wouldn't burn in New York or New Jersey or wherever. It'll just start one heck of a fire here. So always be very, very careful that you have a really good area around where you're burning that uh, it isn't going to travel because it can travel really quick here.
Well, Florida Forest Service, every county has a county forester that you can contact and get information from. And, if there's a burn ban in place because things are too dry, they can tell you about that. If you live out in the country and you want to burn huge piles of brush, this and that, there is a certification that you can get. You have to take training for it. So you'll be able to safely start a great big fire on your property if that's what you want to do. And like I said, University of Florida, if you just Google it, or if you try looking at the title down here, Landscaping in Florida with Fire in Mind, you can find there's a lot of information out there. And it's very important if you live in the middle of the woods that you are aware of this kind of information. It's not the same as like my house in just behind Seven Hills where I don't live in the forest. I guess if my grass gets too dry, like it's been recently, it could catch on fire, but it's not gonna burn very far or very big.
Don't use cedar shingles on your roof, which I
Yeah, you
find
don't
that
want to do that here.
unbelievable that people would do that in forest situations. My goodness.
My goodness, that's a long link, but
Yeah.
when you go back on Facebook and look at the recording and the links, it all looks a lot better. So there's actual pictures, easy to use link there. So hey guys, we've been having a wonderful chat here. Not too many questions today. We do have a few people on here. Couple people on YouTube and the other YouTube and Facebook. So if you have any last minute questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat. Would you believe that next week I'm going to be here also? 2 weeks in a row.
How about that?
Very good. What are you planning? Are you starting anything or doing any planning right now at all?
Not starting anything. I do have this past spring because I fell really far behind and did not do a good job at starting tomato or pepper or eggplant transplants. I was faced with an empty garden and nothing already started to put in it. So I'm thinking, I got to grow something. I want to get some food out of this. What do I know? I ordered new bean seeds. So I planted the whole thing, almost all in green beans. And I have a trellis up against a fence where I planted yellow pole beans. So the first big area of beans grew, looked beautiful, huge flush, huge crop, second flush, second crop. I've already put up 20 quarts of canned green beans. And the second half is just about to come into production also. The yellow pole beans have been very, very good. I got a couple tomato plants, but just, I'll end up with a bowl or two full of tomatoes. That's about it this time. Right now, just growing and harvesting. I don't know what I'm going to do this summer. Thought about a cover crop. I haven't done that for a number of years. I might try that. I could solarize it. I'm waiting on the county to finish making their first batches of compost, see if I can't talk them out of some bucketfuls so I could try it in my garden. So I'm not really sure what I'm going to do this summer. And then before you know it, it's going to be time for fall. I'm going to concentrate on growing a boatload of tomatoes, I think, this fall. I don't need a whole lot of hot peppers. Every time I grow them, they do so well. I end up with a lot that I can dry. I have cayenne powder, jalapeno powder, ahi pepper, which is a very mild hot pepper powder, Thai hot pepper. I got all this dried hot pepper. It's like I don't need to grow anymore. I got plenty of pepper for, making fajitas and things like that. So probably tomatoes this fall. We're gonna focus on a successful tomato crop.
You ever plant habaneros?
No, because they're too hot for me. Although if you want to can hot peppers, you can mix some habaneros in with a bunch of jalapenos, and it kind of balances things out overall. I'm not a big fan of just straight habaneros or ghost peppers and all the super like record breaking hot
Yeah,
ones.
I don't care for those record breakers either.
Yeah.
We had habaneros and ghost peppers growing in a feed drum for a while when I was in like high school. And one of my favorite things is like the pepper sauce where you just put all the peppers in there with vinegar and
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
let it steep for a while. Those are my favorite. And I liked it a lot with the habaneros, but it was pretty hot.
Well, I've made cowboy candy before, and if you look that up online, it's not really pickled peppers, it's candied peppers. So it's basically
Hmm.
jalapenos and a number of other spices and a healthy dose of sugar. So you're eating it and you're getting the sweet and you're getting the hot and you're kind of getting confused, but it's really, really good. I really enjoy it. So I'll probably grow a whole bunch of jalapenos because we like stuffed jalapenos. If I end up with too many, I'll just make a couple more jars of cowboy candy. Um, but probably I need to start thinking about what tomatoes I want to grow.
What about poblanos for chili rellenos?
I grew poblanos and I got enough where I was able to dry them and grind them up. I like poblanos and they'll grow very well here. They're not very hot. They're
No,
not even as hot.
I love them. Just stuff them with um, beef, ground up beef, and
Mhm.
cook them, and maybe some cheese in there. Oh, that is good stuff. I think I'll have to have Mexican for supper now.
We just had Mexican last night. And see, we're going off into recipe land once again.
Not quite lunchtime yet.
Bernie, here's one for you. Quentin says he received his soil test back from the lab, and they do mention me on the soil test report. I'm listed as the contact person there. Am I able to come in and go over them with you? You are more than welcome to come in and go over them with, let me get the direction right, Bernie here, because Bernie is here today. So, Quentin, if you want to stop by sometime today, Bernie's here all day.
I'll be here. I'll till 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
So
A lot of days I'm here also. I will not be here tomorrow, and Bernie won't be here tomorrow. So if you can make it in this afternoon, early this afternoon, that'd be great. More than happy to go over your soil test report.
I I got one. The people want to grow um, Bahia, and they've got a 7.6 pH. There is no way that's going to be a happy Bahia grass at all.
Nope. And it won't like magically disappear and fly away. If you put down Bahia and the pH is high, and high is relative, the higher it is, the unhappier your Bahia is, the thinner it will be. And what do you get when you have really thin, unthrifty Bahia?
You get weeds.
You will get lots of weeds, yes. And then what will your service want to do when you have weeds? Spray herbicides. And I had to help some unfortunate people whose yard was sprayed, but they had a St. Augustine lawn. But the service, I looked at what they had treated with 5 herbicides, a cocktail of 5 herbicides to kill all the weeds in their St. Augustine grass. So if you kill all the weeds in your unhappy, unthrifty Bahia lawn, what are you going to have once again 6 months down the road?
You're going to have weeds again because the Bahia is not going to fill in.
So you
Yeah,
end
I
up on
remember.
this never-ending crazy cycle here that you need to stop and get a clear idea of what's going on and figure out what your goals are, what can you do and come up with a better solution? Because endless weeds, herbicides, weeds, herbicides, weeds, herbicides, endlessly is not a very, very good solution.
Yeah, that's where you
And
go with
I
freedom
know
lawn.
I know 7.4, it seems, oh, that's pretty close to 7. You have to remember that pH scale is logarithmic. So
Mm-hmm.
a 1 change, a 7 to an 8 is 10 times higher than a 7. So that scale is like whoosh, like this. So please remember that when you're saying, oh, it's pretty close. It's not very close at all.
Okay,
Yeah.
guys, looks like Anne Marie started her compost bin and she wants to add red worms. Generally, composting and raising worms are two different pursuits that you're going to do in two different containers. Because even though there's a big overlap between what you might toss in your compost bin and you toss in your worm bin, things aren't exactly the same. Um, we do have a recorded class on vermicomposting, which is raising worms. Had a really, really good extension speaker. And that is on if you go to YouTube and look up Hernando County Government, they have a YouTube channel, and one of the playlists is for Hernando County Extension, who is me. And if you go down, you're going to find the vermicomposting class. We need to do that again. There's always a lot of interest in raising worms.
Very good.
And Anne Marie's blueberries are coming in well. She's way up at the very, very edge of North Florida, so I would assume blueberries can do very well up there. And you're later than we are here in Central Florida, so yeah, now should be about the right time. And if you're growing blackberries, they're going to be coming in after that. And you should be able to grow really good blackberries up in that part of the world also. So every place
I
has
was
their
I
pluses
was
and
on the
minuses.
I was on the golf course this weekend and had there was a lady not playing golf, walking, just picking blackberries everywhere she saw them. I was like, man,
Oh
about
wow.
that time, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I know the you pick blackberry farms here are harvesting right now
Hmm.
for maybe the next 2-3 weeks, something like that.
Yeah, we used to have we used to have them behind the house, just bushes growing, not cultivated or anything. Those blackberries are great, but then I was like, oh, I love blackberries, and you go buy them from the store, and I'm like, man, that is not the same.
Yeah, my wife grew up in Oviedo, and I know Colby, you went to school over there. When she lived in Oviedo, there really was just one traffic light in the city of Oviedo, and they had chickens, but I think they still have chickens running across the road now. Um, and it was very, very rural. They lived in Geneva for a while, and across the street was a Duda Farms cabbage patch or whatever. And
Hmm.
there were blackberries in the woods back then, kind of totally different. Now it's subdivisions and St. Augustine
Pavement.
grass that
There's a
has
whole lot of
problems,
pavement.
and this little never ending procession of trucks driving into neighborhoods, spraying and throwing stuff all over, maybe correctly, maybe not correctly. So the world has changed, hasn't it? There's Colby's Linktree information once again, and that will take you to his Facebook page, website, contact information if you'd like to get a hold of Colby. And
If I'm doing it, it's there.
let's check the last couple comments. Um, Emery's blackberries are flowering. Yep, they should be, and the blackberries are going to follow them pretty quickly. Um, and she has wild and thornless blackberries. Do you recommend a sweet variety? I make jam with them as well. There are a bunch of improved varieties that you can get, and they're all developed by University of Arkansas, and all of the names of them are of Native American tribes. So Can I remember the names of any of them off the top of my head? Kiowa,
Navajo, Arapaho.
Arapaho, Navajo?
I think there's a Navajo.
Yeah,
Anyway, there's about 12 of those native Indian
yeah.
names.
And out of them, some are thorny and some are thornless. Thorny ones tend to be more productive, but they have lots and lots of thorns, and that's not such a good thing. Thornless ones do well, and the good thing is they don't have thorns, but they're not quite as productive as the thorny. So it depends on if you want to get scratched up or not when you're out there picking them. And
I think
quite,
Arapaho is the one of the uh, thornless ones. That's
yeah.
usually what I recommend.
Quentin asks, do you guys consume content from other extensions? Well, yes, I do, as a matter of fact. And
Oh,
I
yes,
work with
I
lots of
do.
other extension offices to create content. I go and teach in other counties in person, online. For a lot of my classes, I try to bring in the best expert in the state to speak on it. So we have recorded classes from in the past on growing strawberries in Florida. I got the University of Florida strawberry breeder to teach that class because, hey, who knows more about growing strawberries than the guy that develops the varieties, right? Had other people with extension teaching about calabasa, vanilla orchids, sweet potatoes, and I need to come up with some more topics to get more speakers in here. And buddy, I'll go ahead and gosh, I've had it on my list here for so long, and like the list is dusty. I think I'll go ahead and try to get a new presenter on vanilla orchids because University of Florida has been doing a lot of research on that, and they have more than one person working on it now. So I'll try to get the other person who did not teach the original class to come on and do vanilla orchids again. And I think that's about it, guys. So, well, so yeah, buddy, when we line that up, I'll go ahead and I'll definitely mention on the plant clinic here. So, hey guys, it looks like we're about 2 minutes over schedule here. So let's go ahead and wrap it up for today. Thank you so much for joining us. If you didn't join us or watch this afterwards, we probably wouldn't even do it. But if you keep turning up, we'll keep turning up. I'll turn up as often as I can. I get pulled here and there and everywhere. I'd much rather be here with all of you sitting in my office, looking at the little camera up there and answering questions. So thank you so much. I want to send a special thank you out to Teresa, who works behind the scenes. She's the one who, when we start mumbling about something, she's looking up the information, the fact sheet on it, and sharing all those links with everybody. University of Florida fact sheets, very valuable resource. But be sure to tune back in next week, Thursday morning, 10 a.m. And I believe all three of us should be here.
I'll try.
Okay. Well, thanks again, guys. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye bye.